I'm not. I can't afford to not record. Welcome to season 6 of the Be Your Own Kind podcast, where we believe that you deserve the space to just be. I'm so excited to share another season with you, packed with fresh perspectives, practical tools, and inspiration to enhance your already amazing self. I hope you enjoy the new content just as much as I've loved bringing it to you. Stay inspired and always remember to be your own kind. Hi, Kristal. How are you today?
I am doing well. Thank you for asking. Thanks for having me.
Yes, thanks for being on here. Really appreciate it. I was just telling the audience, I was just telling Kristal offline that we don't have a lot of relationship experts on the show, so I'm really excited to get into some things.
Yeah, I'm ready.
Yes, can you let everybody know a little bit about yourself?
Sure. My name is Kristal DeSantis. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist in Austin, Texas. And I wrote a book called Strong, a relationship field guide for the modern man, which it has tips for men, but also for women and anybody in relationships. And it's something I'm really passionate about, right? Just talking about healthy relationships and spreading the word. Because, healthy relationships make for healthy, happy people. So
Yeah, yeah. So, what prompted you to write a relationship book for men?
I noticed that, so I work with couples, and a
Mm-hmm.
lot of times, coming into counseling, it was either if a man would call me, it was because his wife was threatening to leave him, or she was saying, like, I'm done with this. And so he was kind of like really ready to work, but also didn't really understand how he got there. Or on the other side, I would get calls from women who set up the appointments and kind of same thing. Maybe they've done their own work. They were in individual therapy. They were ready to do couples work. And so I just noticed that there was a little bit of an imbalance between like how prepared the women were versus what the men would come in with. Either they were like, I just don't understand at all, or, it's been a couple of years my wife's been asking, and now I know that she's like got all this stuff and she's got all this language, she's got all this like therapeutic stuff that I don't really know like how to start this. So even though, of course, I talk about healthy relationships for all people, I noticed that a lot of men just didn't have the same resources and didn't have the same confidence then coming into the couple session that the women would have coming in.
And that makes a lot of sense because women, like we run marathons for this. We're training for this since we're a little girl because that's how
Exactly.
we get reared up. And men are more about careers and not, and then
Mhm.
they're not allowed to be in touch with their emotions. And so it
Mhm.
kind of does make sense where they're just like, well, what am I doing wrong? Like,
Exactly, exactly. And you bring up such a good point. There was an article the other day about how even the books for girls, little girls, they talk about emotions, they talk about people, that get into fights, they get in fights with their girlfriends, they make up, there's friendships, there's like emotional situations that little girls then learn to navigate. And then little boys, books for little boys are not about that at all. They're usually about, some kind of hero's journey. The little boy that then, slays the dragon, accomplishes something, and then, you know, he's the hero. Congratulations. And so again, just noticing exactly what you said, like how women are prepared for relationships and how sometimes men are overlooked in that conversation of like, come on, you should just get it. And they're like, we literally don't. We haven't had the same training. We haven't had the same conversations. We haven't had the same exposure. And yeah, it's a big gap. It's a knowledge gap.
yeah, and besides you being a woman, which kind of sets you apart, giving advice to men, kind of like giving them the roadmap.
Mhm.
What other things that or other advice that sets you apart from any other like relationship books? You know, there's a lot of them out there.
Mhm.
What are you looking for the reader to kind of grab from your
Mhm.
book?
You know, I totally get it. There's so many excellent books and resources out there. What I wanted to do was kind of do like a blueprint, right? When people talk about healthy relationships, that's a big concept, right? And you might
Mhm.
read a book, and one book says like a healthy relationship looks like this, and then you read a different book, and it's like a healthy relationship looks like this. Um, And it's like, which one is right? And then you talk to your neighbor and they're like, well, my relationship looks like this and we feel it's healthy, right? And so there's just so many different avenues of information that can be overwhelming. So what I wanted to put into my book is, so it's called Strong. And Strong is an acronym for the 6 pillars that, based on my clinical work, I've been a therapist for 10 years now, based on my research, based on my education and specialized training, of the elements that really make for a healthy relationship, not just by, people's personal stories, but also backed by research. So these 6 letters represent the essential elements of a healthy relationship. And then, you can zhuzh it up however you want, right? You can apply it to your own life in any way,
Right.
but as long as you have these essential elements, you're on your way to a healthy relationship.
I love that. And listeners, if you want to know about those pillars, this book is on Audible, which gives you a great excuse to not have to actually sit. You can just listen to it when you're on your way to work, whatever. And you got all those Audible credits that you are not using. I'm one of those people. So grab the book Strong. Grab it.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Yes. I love that. So I'll go ahead.
Oh, that's what I was going to say. That was something else I heard from men when they would come in. It's like, I don't read, or I'm not going to read a book. And I'm like, hey, guess what? It's on Audible. So,
no excuse.
Pop it in on your way to work. And that was also something I wanted to make it really like digestible, that you could listen to 5 minutes, 10 minutes and get something out of it. You didn't have to read the whole book to like have the story be finished. It's kind of like a field guide. You can pop it open, see if there's, a tool or a tip or a quote that speaks to you, and all right, practice that. Go from there.
Yeah, but I think women should read that too, because maybe we can understand a little bit of what men don't understand. Because I will say me as women, when I say women, we think they know already, like they're mind readers or something. Like we're looking for this validation or this certain thing or this certain hero, and they're like, but I am here. And it's like, but here's the way I want it to be, when we could just communicate that, because they're not mind readers.
Exactly. And I think that you bring such a good point up. Again, like with women have their own experience. Women are socialized in a certain way, and men are socialized in a completely different way. Mm-hmm. And I think there's a lot, like I put it in my book, about this assumption of similarity, right? Sometimes we assume, like let's say you meet your partner, you meet some guy, and you grew up in the same neighborhood, and you went to the same school, and you're like, oh my gosh, so we think the same. And it's like, no, you don't. Like, you grew up in 2 completely different worlds, just when it comes to like relationship skills, or talking about emotions, or asking for what you need, or sex, asking for intimacy, being vulnerable. Like, men and women have very different scripts about what's okay, what's not okay. And then sometimes, like I've said, or, just when I went to college and I would go to a sorority house, and then I would go and visit a frat house. And I'm like, okay, and these 2 people are then supposed to live in one house together at some point in their lives. Like, is nobody seeing how big of a disaster we're planning for? And that's kind of how we also socialize men and women to, relate. And so I think just kind of acknowledging like how wide of a gap there is can sometimes help women also, be a little bit more compassionate, a little bit more patient. But also for men to be like, hey guys, there's a huge gap here. Like, we got to step it up, and let's find some middle ground here.
Yeah, most definitely. So, let's get into some relationship questions.
Okay.
You like, okay. So what do you think are the biggest challenges people face in modern dating, and how can they overcome them?
Modern dating it's a whole new animal. And one of the biggest challenges is, I think it's interesting, because it feels like a lot of people, especially that I talk to that are dating, they're like, it feels like I'm trying so hard and I'm putting myself out there so much. But maybe I'll say something a little bit controversial, is I feel like in some ways we've also gotten really lazy with dating, right? Because it's like you can swipe, maybe arrange something, maybe not, maybe respond to somebody, maybe not, maybe give someone a chance, maybe block them. And I think sometimes what the modern dating like landscape has done is disconnect us from the humanity, right? It's
Yeah.
like there are humans out there that are looking for love just like you. And I think the app culture has really like disconnected us from that. It's almost like commodified it. It's like swipe, 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 hot, not, yes, no. I'll make a date with this person and then I'll just decide to stay in bed that day and not, and so that kind of like taking what actually is a really beautiful thing, right? Connection, the possibility of love, the possibility of making a moment with another human just get reduced to like, is it something I'm interested in investing in or not in this moment based on like not taking it very seriously. So that's been something I've seen for a lot of people that's caused a lot of pain, is that disconnect between, how serious this actually is, finding a life partner versus the way that maybe we've kind of gotten used to treating it like something that's not very serious, something that you just pick up, put down, pick up, put down, drop, pick.
Yeah, it seems pretty artificial just from what you're saying, and you do make a point. Because okay, I'm watching Love Is Blind on Netflix, and these people are so emotional, and they get attached so quick because there's no technology in this. You're
Mm.
just sitting there and you're connecting
Mhm.
with this person, and you're unloading on this for all this stuff you've been holding in. And the men I find were more like emotional than the women on this show because they
Mhm.
finally got a chance to just talk about trauma, their life, and this and that. And they're like,
Mhm.
I've just been looking for this kind of connection. And you make a point when they're probably in the outside world, they probably are swiping right, left, right, left. And I think that's why that show kind of worked because there are some successful couples out there
Yeah.
because they had a minute to disconnect so they can
Mhm.
connect. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
Like, so I
Exactly.
feel like there is a yearning and a need for like
Mhm.
authentic connection, but
Mhm.
technology kind of diluted it in sort of a way.
Yeah, absolutely. Also, there's something really interesting about the Love Is Blind show is, I think, like you said, a lot of the men can be very emotional and very open and very vulnerable. But then when you get them out in the real world, sometimes like that vulnerability doesn't quite, um, and not just the men, right? Both people. But I
Mhm.
thought that was so interesting because one of the things I see in couples sometimes is women like to talk, and sometimes, we like to talk face to face, and, we sit down on a couch and we want to share. And men often like to connect kind of not doing the face to face contact, more shoulder to shoulder. Like if you see how men interact with each other, they're like, they're sitting at a bar or they're at a barbecue or they're, facing the game and they kind of, or they're fishing. And so it's more shoulder to shoulder than it is face to face. And so having that little barrier sometimes can make it a little bit more comfortable to go vulnerable because you're not just like being so confronted face to face, if that makes sense.
It does, and I'm thinking of what you're saying, and that does make sense. I wonder why that is. Do you know why that's a thing?
Some of it is, I mean, there's lots of different reasons. I put some of them in my book of like, there's the ways that women's brains, have more connections in this way, and men have more connections in this way. But also a lot of it is socialization, right? When women can get together and like, girl, I just need to talk. Like, I'll just come over to your house and sit on the couch. Men just don't quite have that culture, right? If a guy calls his buddy up and it's like, hey, I'm just going to come over and sit on your couch and vent, it might be like, whoa, 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 let's do that in front of the TV, or let's do that in like, let's do something. So there is some cultural norms that make it difficult for men to just sit down and connect face to face in a vulnerable way.
Mm. And you do make a point. I'm on the part where they're still in the pod, but I
Mm.
did see. I think I jumped from the first season to the seventh. I can't even tell you what happened in between. But on the first season, I know they did start acting a fool when they were when they went to the island and then tried to like um come back into the world because once again, all the stuff that they were disconnected from, they
Mhm.
came back to. And so my question to you is, how does a person successfully like navigate through the complexities of dating in a digital age?
A lot of it is about having boundaries with yourself. Our phones have permeated every single aspect of our lives, right? Like first thing when you wake up, you look at your phone, you're brushing your teeth, you look at your phone, you're on the toilet, you look at your phone, like it's always there. And so that's really what it comes down to. Is it, like you said, you notice that when they are in the pods, they have to be present with each other. They have to be fully present with each other, even though there's a wall. Emotionally, they are present with each other for those, whatever hours or whatever they are in the pods. As soon as they go out, you notice how difficult it is to just be present, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's distractions, there's this, there's your phone, there's the emails, there's work, there's other people, there's, and so that's really what it is you got to start with, am I able to set boundaries for myself so I can just be present with my partner and give them that full attention that they deserve and that I need in order to really get a connection going, right? It's like, yeah, it's so tough to just be present these days.
Right. And it's not just technology. I find that family values and acceptances and things like that, that seems to me like the biggest turmoil within a relationship. Just by watching TV, but just by talking with other people, how if the spouse is in a certain religion, a certain race, doesn't do a certain thing or that, then my mom is never going. If my mom doesn't accept you, then I can't accept you. Like it's constructs like that too that play a part in a relationship. And it's like who's more important, like your family values or this person that you just fallen head over heels with. And I see a lot of people battle with that.
Yeah, and that is something, as marriage therapists, sometimes it's like, the things that cause the most issues in relationships is, families, finances, and sex. Right? It's like these big three. And then, of course, families also include if you have children and blending a family, because people generally have emotional values attached, right? It's not just, sure, we can invite my family or not. It's like there's something attached to that feels really deep and really important. And so I think for modern couples, it's that finding that balance between how much do I kind of hold to what my family believes is important versus how much do I get to decide for myself what's going to be important to me and my life and my spouse and the way I want to raise my family, right? Yeah, and that's a lot.
And how not to deal with the backlash if you just go with your heart.
Mm-hmm.
That's the thing. And I mean, a lot of parents separate from their kids based off their romantic choices. And I'm like, wow.
Yeah, that's a really complicated thing, right? Because there's also from the adults, so sometimes like not just working with couples, but adult children and their parents is another kind of combination of relationships I work with sometimes. And often it's like the parents are trying to protect their children, but it comes off as control, right? And that's that's a whole other conversation.
Yeah, that's a whole other episode.
But again, it's like that can also be true for couples, right? Where it's like where you're trying to express care and it comes off as control, and then it's like feels like there's a ultimatum happening. It's generally doesn't go well.
Yeah. And so you mentioned that one of the issues as well is sex and intimacy. And anytime you start a relationship, it's like boom, pow, 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 pow. And then like the more you're in this relationship, it's like boom, ping, what are some advice that you can have for like relations, like long lasting relationships, like how to keep the sparks going and the intimacy, pumping?
Yeah. I think a lot of it is, again, that intentionality and making that a focus of constant attention and nurturing, right? Because like you said, in the beginning, you kind of just, your hormones just kind of take over, right? You don't really have to work at all. Like it's just magic. And so that's really what I see as couples struggle when the hormones aren't like driving the ship. They're like, well, we don't have a plan for success because we've always relied on just like the magic. But now that we have kids, or now that we, have a very busy life, or now that we just kind of live together and the hormones have kind of died down, like we don't have a agreement on how we're going to treat this seriously. And then it becomes a push-pull, right? And one partner is like, it's very serious to me. And the other partner is like, well, I've got these other things that are more important to me. Like, and so that's where just that intentionality is so important, of saying, like, if this is something that we want to continue to nurture, we want to continue to have a healthy sex life and good intimacy that makes us both feel fulfilled and pleasurable, how do we make space for that, even though our lives are going to get busier, that we're going to have challenges? And just be intentional about a plan for success there.
Do you think it's transactional for people to like plan their like intimacy days, or if it works for that couple, it works for that couple?
It's one of those things. It's almost like that romantic idea that like it's just supposed to happen by magic, right? And that if you plan it, it takes the magic out of it, right? But honestly, I like to reframe that of like, if you only got to eat when your partner was hungry at the exact same time, and you just waited only to eat in those moments where you both looked at each other and was like, are you thinking what I'm thinking? Right? You would probably be miserable, because again, you have different needs, you have different body rhythms, you have different desires, you have different baselines. And so having that agreement that like, yes, we eat dinner every night at this time, like, it doesn't make it any less special. If anything, you can start planning for it, you can start anticipating it, you can start talking about it. And so I think reframing that of like, oh, but it's just better when we just look at each other and know that we both want tacos at the same time. Instead thinking about it as something that you anticipate, you look forward to, you buy the ingredients for it, you set up the atmosphere, you clear your schedule, you turn on some music. And that can actually be a lot more exciting when you start thinking about it that way.
I like that. Yeah, don't make it so trend, because you're right. The romance is out the window when like, okay, it's Wednesday at 7 p.m.
Yeah, no, and that's like, we don't want it to feel like a chore. But again,
Right.
if you schedule it, it can still be something that you then plan and look forward to.
Right.
Which is, again, like, I mean, you do that with other important things in your life, right? If you're going to go on a vacation, if you're going to see a friend, if you're going to, do something that's important to you, if in the dating period, if you're going to go on a date, you don't just wake up and be like, hey, what are you doing? You want to go out right now? Which is also, again, I think this is something that doesn't get talked about enough, is the difference between spontaneous and responsive desire, right? Mm-hmm. And sometimes, especially in movies and TV, we elevate this idea of like the spontaneous desire, right? Two people walk into a room and suddenly they're like tearing each other's clothes off. And you're like, wow, this just happened, right? As opposed to the responsive desire, which actually most women identify as having responsive desire. That if their husband just like strips naked and is like, ta-da, woman's like, yeah, I'm going to need a little bit more than that, right? Like the spontaneous idea that we're just going to jump each other's bones all the time. So the responsive desire of like, I will get turned on in response to the pleasure. I will get turned on in response to an environment that invites me into pleasure. A dim lighting, a gentle music, a nice bath. Like, my desire will start to activate when I have an environment that I can respond to, and that the pleasure has to kind of come first before the arousal happens. And that's where often, especially in couples, where the guys are like, but I can do spontaneous. It's like, yes, but maybe your partner can't.
Right. So it's kind of learning who you're with. Don't expect the person to want what you want or into what you're into. It's learning each other. It's supposed to be like a compromise. I love that. So in your opinion, Kristal, what role does self-awareness and emotional intelligence play in successful relationships today?
Oh my gosh, it is number one. And so that is the number one chapter in my book of creating safety in relationships. It starts with self-awareness. Because if you don't know what kind of impact you're having on your partner, if you don't even know what you need in a relationship, you're going to just be it's like the blind leading the blind, right? It's going to be two people that are going to be frustrated, trying to get their needs met, not really knowing how, and just kind of bumping up against each other. So the self-awareness of like, I know who I am. I know maybe what the impact of negative experiences from my past or, childhood or ex partners. I know what I'm carrying. And I can go and address that so I can be a little bit more healed. Or, at least when I come into a relationship, I can tell my partner what my triggers are. I can be emotionally intelligent about, this is the stuff that I'm bringing in and, what I need from my partner in order to help navigate that. Right. As opposed to, I'm not self-aware. I just expect that when I meet the right person, they'll magically make me better.
And that's a major responsibility to put on someone, to heal you, to validate you, to just be your everything. That's a lot to put on a person.
Yeah. And it's really not healthy, right?
No, you're right.
Yeah. So
yeah, that's a lot of that's a lot of responsibility. And I find that even when I first married, I just thought that same thing, like, oh, my husband's just gonna rescue me from everything. And then later on in the marriage, it's like he has stuff that he kind of want to be rescued from too.
Yeah.
They're not the only one that has trauma and this and that. Like, men need a little bit of rescuing, men need a little bit of tender care, and the stuff that we yearn from them, they actually want that from us. We just verbalize it more.
Absolutely. And again, this is kind of that catch-22 or that awareness of sometimes the things we're asking for from our partners, they have never been on the receiving end of. Right. If you had a man that grew up in a really hard household and maybe he never got the words of affirmation, he never got the words of encouragement, he never got the experience of being nurtured and loved and cared for. And then suddenly we expect like, well, you're just going to know how to do it for me. Right. It's like how that's it's like it's difficult to give something that you've never received. So also kind of being aware of that.
Yeah, that's really important. That's deep. That's relationship within it. I mean, a conversation within itself as well. So, Kristal, what you got going on in the future? What can we look forward to?
Yeah, so I am actually so obviously I do therapy in Texas, but I'm also going to be doing some courses so I can do online and work with people anywhere in America. And I'm also going to be in the new year running some bonding retreats for couples, because one thing I also noticed is a lot of couples, they get bogged down and they just forget to have fun together. And sometimes playfulness and pleasure and fun just happens when you can get away and reconnect and just, once again, kind of be who you are outside of the busyness or the responsibilities of life. So yeah, I'm going to partner with my husband and we're going to take couples and go have fun and take some, we're going to learn some skills, but we're going to have a lot of fun doing it. So
I love that. Is that going to be in Texas?
I'm going to start in Texas because, that's where I'm based. But eventually we're hoping to, take couples all over. I mean, my husband and I actually, that's been something that we want to share because it's been so important for us in our marriage. And last year we ended up checking off the final box of we've been to every habitable continent together. And nice. So, yeah, we're excited to, share our experiences and our love for travel, but also our love for helping couples get healthy and learn some communication skills, but in a fun and exciting setting. So start in Texas.
Starting Texas. I love that. So you can give any advice to us married people out here. What is something that you've learned in your marriage that you would want to share with other married people?
Your partner is human, right? And so are you, right? Especially like you said, like your partner is not going to be your hero, but they're also not always the villain. Like, let's let them be human. Wow. So that's something that's really important, but also just practical skill that I use in my marriage and also with the couples that I work with, and I put it in my book, is, the 4 positions of conversation. So position number 1 is just listening, just holding space, right? Sometimes your partner comes home, they've had a bad day, they just need a vent, just listen, right? Position 2 is joining, is offering empathy, saying like, I can see how that would make you upset. Like, gosh, I've experienced that as well. Like I'm on your side, like I'm joining with you in your experience. And then position 3 is fixing. Can I offer you a solution? All right. And then position 4 is debate. Would you be open to seeing things a different way? Right. But here's the thing. The reason why this is such an effective tool is often when women in relationships, they want listening and joining. And often what men generally offer each other is a solution or a debate. And so this is one of those things I've seen in couples where she's like, I just want him to listen. And he's like, well, I thought I was trying to help and like, or reframe her perspective so she wouldn't be sad anymore. And that has caused a lot of issues. So, just, I have this little thing, I, put it on your fridge is, do you want me to be position 1, position 2, position 3, position 4? Like, point me in a direction. If you want me to listen, I'll listen. If you want me to offer a solution, I got that. But, that little tool to help couples get on the same page in the same conversation. I use it all the time with my husband, like, am I listening or am I fixing? Or do you want me to debate you? Because I'll debate you, right?
I'm ready.
But it's very useful to kind of give direction. Yeah.
That is smart. I think we have like a little code word because sometimes I do just want to vent with no solution. I'm not looking for a solution. Mm-hmm. I just want to talk about how Sally made me mad and I just want to get it out. Mm-hmm. And so now it's like, okay, are you trying to fix this or I just want to vent? I start off like, this is not a solution-based conversation. Mm-hmm. And that does help because I used to feel like, why is he always trying to fix stuff? Like, why don't he just listen? But once again, he's not a mind reader. He's thinking, like you said, he's a man. He's like, okay, how can I fix this relationship with you and Sally? And it's like, we're going to be fine tomorrow. I'm just mad today. Like,
Exactly. And this is, again, the socialization, right? Women are often socialized to do positions 1 and 2 with each other, and men are socialized to do positions 3 and 4. So, help each other out.
Right.
That's really what it is. Like at the end of the day, your partner is just a human, just like you, trying to figure things out, trying to get the love that, makes you both feel good. So help each other out.
Yeah, that's some very good advice. Here at BYOK, we have a signature question. If you could describe yourself in one word, what would it be and why?
Ooh, I think just curious. Like I'm a very curious person. I like to learn about a lot of different things. I'm a very curious person. So
I mean, you're constantly learning in a sense.
Yeah, I like to. Right? I would love to just keep learning all the things. So.
Okay. Love that. So if you are in Texas and you want to meet with Kristal, or if you just want to keep up with everything Kristal and what she's doing, how would they contact you?
Well, I'm on Instagram at ATX Therapist because I'm in Austin, Texas. There's also my website. It's just strong.love.
Straight to the point.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. Right, you like it's not even hard to find. Just strong.love. Well, Kristal, thank you so much for your time and your insight. I feel like Strong should be a book women should read too. I really do. And I thank you for reaching out to men and giving them the roadmap because there are some guys they're labeled as difficult or bad when really they just don't know. Mm-hmm. And so relationships fall because of that. Or fail.
Exactly. And so this is yes, I agree. Like women also reading this book to understand the language as well. And maybe sometimes, sharing the insights with your partner if he's interested, but also for men. Yes. I know it can be overwhelming. Sometimes a lot of the messages out there can get very confusing. And so, just know that there are resources. There is help, there is a plan. Women are not totally complicated and like love is not just like this big old mystery. Like there are specific skills and tools you can learn to get the love you want.
I love that. Because we all deserve it.
Absolutely.
Yes. Thank you again, Kristal, for your time. And listeners, be kind to yourself and to your mate too. And until next time, don't forget to be your own kind. Bye.